They met in the most unexpected place, beneath the city, where stories rarely have happy endings. The old underground art gallery in Karachi was supposed to be abandoned, nothing more than faded murals and forgotten whispers. But to Rohaan it was the only place where his mind could breathe. A once-renowned street photographer now turned recluse, Rohaan had spent the past 2 years chasing shadows instead of light. Grief had stolen the color from his life, until one rainy evening, when he found her standing in front of a cracked wall, painting a pair of closed eyes with her bare hands. Her name was Miraal. Fierce, elegant, unapologetically lost, a struggling urban architect by day, and an anonymous muralist by night, she had secrets buried deeper than the city's foundations. When Rohaan saw her that night, her hands smeared in crimson and blue, she wasn't just painting, she was bleeding on the walls. And something in him stirred. Their first words weren't romantic. They were curious, guarded, but charged with the tension of two people who had forgotten what connection feels like. "You don't belong here," Rohaan had said. It wasn't just the mural that night. It was the silence between them, the kind that said, "I've been carrying this pain too." Rohaan hadn't meant to come back the next day. He told himself he was just retrieving a forgotten lens cap, but when he descended those damp stairs again, Miraal was already there, this time sketching blueprints in charcoal beside the mural she'd left unfinished. Her hands were stained again, and so was her shirt, her hair tied in a lazy knot like she hadn't slept. She barely acknowledged him, but Rohaan noticed how she didn't flinch at his footsteps. "You're not afraid someone might report you?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She gave a small laugh. "People only see what they want. No one looks beneath the city anymore." Something in her voice made Rohaan pause. He sat down across from her, his back against the peeling brick. He didn't ask why she was here. Maybe because part of him already knew. Maybe because he had his own reasons he didn't want to say out loud. Years ago, this space was alive. It had been a creative sanctuary for misfits and dreamers, before a fire turned it to ash. Rohaan had photographed its final exhibit, the one that featured his late sister's last collection. He never showed those photos to anyone, not even himself. And now Miraal was painting again, on the same wall. Miraal's father had been the lead architect behind the city's failed underground rail project. A scandal had ruined his name, but no one ever proved anything. Miraal never spoke about it, not even when rumors stained her career. But the blueprint she sketched tonight, it looked eerily like the tunnel plans that were supposedly lost years ago. Rohaan noticed, but said nothing. Instead he asked, "Why do you only paint eyes?" She hesitated, fingers still smudged with charcoal. "Because people forget to look. And sometimes, I don't want them to see too much." They didn't touch. They didn't flirt. But something raw and unspoken formed between them. A slow ache, a quiet knowing. Miraal started arriving earlier each evening. Rohaan brought his camera, but he never took a single photo. Not of her. Not yet. Some moments are too fragile to capture. That it was supposed to be just a forgotten space. But now, beneath this city of noise and forgetting, something had been uncovered. And neither Rohaan nor Miraal knew what to do with it. The journal Miraal found was nearly falling apart, its pages damp from years underground. But the writing was unmistakable, her father's. A series of sketches, calculations, and fragmented letters addressed to someone named Azim. A man Miraal had never heard of. What unsettled her more wasn't what was written, but what was missing. Entire entries were torn out, whole plans redacted. But in the margins of one page, a single line chilled her. What they buried isn't concrete, it's truth. Miraal hadn't told Rohaan everything yet. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But the fear of what this meant, of what her father may have hidden, kept her quiet. Her father had died 6 years ago in what was called a suicide. Now for the first time she wasn't sure it was. Rohaan noticed the shift in her. Miraal became distant, distracted. Her sketches more frantic. He found her one evening pacing the gallery, that journal pressed to her chest like a shield. When he asked her about it, she looked at him with eyes full of fire and silence. "There's more down here than we know," she said. "And we might not be the only ones looking for it." Because now strange things were happening. The lights, ones that hadn't worked in years, flickered on without explanation. A power source that shouldn't exist. And 2 nights ago, Rohaan swore he heard footsteps echoing behind them. Not rats. Not the wind. Human. Then there was the man in the tan coat. Rohaan spotted him at street level, near the alley above the gallery. Clean-shaven. Wearing a lanyard that flashed too quickly to read. Government? Private contractor? Either way, he was watching. Not them, the building. Rohaan kept it to himself for now. He didn't want to feed Miral's paranoia. Or worse, confirm his own. The deeper they got into the journal, the more the city's old secrets came alive. Buried blueprints of an underground transit system long thought to be scrapped. But the plans Miral found detailed access tunnels, places not listed in any city record. One of them ran directly beneath the Supreme Cultural Council's archive building, a place her father had once publicly accused of stealing his designs. Rohan's instincts as a journalist kicked in. This wasn't just grief anymore. It was a story, a dangerous one, the kind that could ruin people, or save them. He stayed late that night, scanning the journal, cross-referencing what little he remembered from when his sister brought him here all those years ago. That's when he saw it. A half-burnt photo clipped inside the back cover. It was of a young woman, laughing, paint on her cheeks. Behind her, the same mural Miral had been painting. But the woman wasn't Miral. Rohaan didn't sleep. Not after that photo. Not after the lights flickered again, this time without dying out. He sat in his apartment, the journal spread open on his desk, pages pinned with notes and printed overlays. Miral's father and his sister hadn't just known each other. They'd built something together. A movement. A resistance. One that the fire had silenced. Or so it seemed. Miral showed up at his door at 2:14 a.m., soaked in sweat and fear. "Someone was following me," she said breathlessly. "I lost them near the Clifton underpass." Rohaan didn't ask questions. He pulled her inside, locked the door. Her hand trembled as she gripped the journal tighter than ever. They sat in the stillness for a long moment, breathing in the reality they could no longer ignore. There was a reason this space had stayed buried. And someone wanted it that way. "I think my father was silenced," Miral whispered. "He kept these blueprints because he knew what they meant. There's something under that archive building, something worth killing for." Rohaan nodded. "Then we need to find it before they do." The next day, they returned to the underground gallery with purpose. Tools. Flashlights. A sense of finality. The journal had led them to a bricked-over wall, one that didn't match the original blueprint. Rohaan ran his hand across the stone. It had been plastered hastily, sealed decades ago. "We're breaking in," Miral asked, voice shaking. "We're uncovering what they buried." They worked for hours. Sweat. Dust. Silence. Until the first stone gave way, and behind it, a narrow tunnel untouched by time. It was deeper than expected, winding. Cold. At its end, a rusted iron door. Rohaan reached for it, but Miral stopped him. "What if this changes everything?" Rohaan looked at her. Not just as a woman he'd come to trust, but someone who now carried the same weight he did. "It already has." They opened the door. Inside, a massive concrete vault. Files. Blueprints. Old film reels. And a mural, one no one outside this room had ever seen. It was her father's final work. And his message was clear. They stole the city from the people. And they buried the truth. Just as they began photographing it, a faint sound echoed behind them. A door slamming. Footsteps. They weren't alone anymore. It was his sister. The realization hit him like a wave. Miral's father knew his sister. Worked with her. Which meant Miral had to know too, unless... "You never met her, did you?" Rohaan asked suddenly. They didn't have time to hesitate. Rohaan grabbed the file marked Section Z, while Azim led them down a different tunnel. One Miral hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a crumbling steel cabinet. The echo of boots above them was getting closer now, no longer subtle. Whoever wanted to bury this place was ready to erase the last witnesses too. The tunnel narrowed. Dust thickened. But the file in Rohan's hands weighed heavier than the air. His sister Alina was alive. After all these years. After the fire. After the grief that had devoured his family and left him hollow. Every step forward was both hope and fear. What would she be like now? Miraal pressed forward beside him, her fingers brushing his briefly. It wasn't a romantic touch. Not yet. It was something older than romance: loyalty. Shared fury. Bound by loss neither of them had words for. Azim stopped before an iron ladder. This takes us beneath the old railway yard. There's an exit at street level, through the ventilation shaft of an abandoned customs office. Once we're out, we go straight to her. They climbed in silence. At the top, behind a rusted gate, moonlight spilled across a deserted parking lot. The air felt different, wider, harder, like they'd surfaced from another lifetime. By morning, they were in a car heading south. The address was in Thada, an old psychiatric clinic built like a fortress. Rohaan stared out the window, clutching the file. Miraal placed her hand over his. "She's still your sister," she whispered. "No matter what they've done." The facility was colder than expected. Staff claimed they had no record of a woman named Alina Rauf, but Azim had prepared. He slid an old ID photo under the desk, whispered something in Sindhi, and then the silence broke. "Yes," the nurse finally said. "Room 14. Rohaan didn't remember breathing as he walked the dim corridor. Didn't feel the floor. Miraal walked beside him, her fingers tightening around his for the first time, not just in comfort, but in fear. They reached the room. Inside, on a narrow bed by the window, a woman sat drawing with a dull pencil on yellowed paper. The moment Rohaan stepped in, she looked up. Her face was thinner, hair streaked with gray. But her eyes, those were still hers. "Rohaan." His knees buckled. "Alina." She stood slowly, unsure. Her hands trembled. I dreamed you'd come." He crossed the room in 2 steps and wrapped her in the hug he'd waited a lifetime to give. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. Everything they'd lost was pouring out in that embrace. Miraal stepped back, her eyes filling with tears. And for a moment, the ghosts of her own father, of the fire, of the mural, all softened. Because here, healing had finally begun. But peace wasn't simple. The wind howled as Miraal slammed the car door shut, her heartbeat pulsing in her ears. Rohaan helped Alina into the back seat, her hands clinging to her sketchbook like it was the only anchor she had left. Behind them, the man in the tan coat watched from across the street, expression unreadable, but unmistakably threatening. The message on Miral's phone replayed in her mind. "You should have left it buried. Now we bury you." But she wasn't the same woman who had walked into that underground vault days ago. Rohaan jumped in beside her. "Drive." She did. They sped down the coastal road, the ocean to their left, the rising sun casting blush-colored light over the skyline. A city that had hidden its truth too long. Back in Karachi, Azim was already working. With the files in hand, he met a retired journalist from Miral's father's old circle. She still owed him a favor. Together they prepared a leak, one that would shatter the foundations of the false narrative fed to the public for decades. The mural. The recordings. The documents. The survivor, Alina. By the time Rohaan and Miraal got Alina to a safe house, the footage had already gone viral. Underground resistance networks, forgotten city maps, embezzled art funds, and most damning of all, a list of names. Officials. CEOs. Media heads. It was no longer just their fight. In the days that followed, chaos reigned in the city's upper echelons. Investigations were opened. Resignations flooded in. And Miraal? She stood in front of a camera, her father's mural behind her, and told the truth. This city doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to its people. And no system that buries the truth should ever survive the light. The video broke records. As the dust began to settle, Miraal returned to the gallery ruins, now protected by law after her testimony. She ran her fingers over the old brick wall, the same one her father had painted before they silenced him. Rohaan found her there. "She'd be proud of you," he said quietly. "She. My sister. Alina." Miraal smiled, tears in her eyes. "And your sister would have been proud of you." Rohaan stepped closer. "So what now?" Miraal laughed softly. "Now? I rebuild. Restore what my father started. I'll open the gallery again. Not in marble, but in memory. Accessible to everyone. Real stories. Real art. And you." She looked up at him. "What about you?" "I think," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "I'd like to stay. There, amid the echoes of loss, they finally allowed themselves a moment of peace. He took her hand. She didn't let go. Glowing star moral takeaway. Sometimes the truth is buried so deep, it takes love, loss, and courage to unearth it. But when it surfaces, it heals. Justice doesn't live in the headlines. It breathes in the brave choices ordinary people make when no one's watching. Movie camera viewer engagement questions. Speech balloon, did you enjoy the story? Speech balloon, what kind of stories would you like to hear next? Romantic mysteries? Historical drama? Real-life inspired tales? Let us know in the comments. Page facing up story summary, quick recap. In Beneath the City of Blush, Miraal and Rohaan uncover a decades-old conspiracy involving her father's mysterious death and Rohan's missing sister. Their journey takes them through Karachi's hidden tunnels, forgotten truths, and an unexpected reunion. Along the way, they rediscover love, healing, and the courage to speak out, finally freeing a city bound by silence. In the end, justice is reclaimed not just through proof, but through purpose. White heavy checkmark. YouTube adds suitability checklist to ensure the story qualifies for green monetization. Confirm the following. White heavy checkmark. No explicit content, graphic violence, or profanity. White heavy checkmark. No depiction of sexual content, nudity, or adult themes. White heavy checkmark. Sensitive issues like trauma and corruption are handled tastefully. White heavy checkmark. Positive and hopeful resolution. White heavy checkmark. Emotionally intense but not disturbing to general viewers. White heavy checkmark. No politically sensitive or controversial calls to action. Memo. YouTube description, SEO-Optimized description. Welcome to the final episode of Beneath the City of Blush, an emotional romantic mystery set in the hidden heart of Karachi. Miraal and Rohaan's journey ends with a stunning revelation, a long-lost sister's return, and a city finally forced to reckon with its secrets. Sparkles watch as love, loss, and truth collide in this gripping South Asian drama. Artist palette featuring underground art, political mystery, and heart-stirring romance. Inspired by real themes of resistance, memory, and the power of storytelling. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more episodic love stories with mystery and meaning. Hashtag Beneath the City of Blush, hashtag South Asian drama, hashtag romantic mystery, hashtag YouTube stories, hashtag emotional storytelling, hashtag art and activism, hashtag healing through truth. Azim came to the door. They know we're here. We have to leave now. They fled into the sunlight with Alina between them, a woman reborn from silence. But as they reached the car, Miraal froze. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one message. You should have left it buried. Now we bury you. She looked up and saw the man in the tan coat standing across the street, watching. Rohaan followed her gaze. Go. Drive. I'll handle him. No, Miraal said, breath quickening. We finished this together. Because beneath the city of Blush, love had grown in the ruins. And now it stood tall in the daylight, scarred, shaken, but whole, and ready for whatever came next. Miraal shook her head slowly, confused. Who? My sister. She was part of the artist collective here. Died in the fire. Miraal's face changed. Softened. I've only seen her in articles. That mural I'm painting. It's hers. I didn't know. I just felt it. The space between them pulsed with something bigger than romance now. Something bound by grief, legacy, and dangerous truths. Miraal reached out, gently touching the edges of the scorched photo. Maybe our families were never meant to be strangers. And still, in the shadows of the gallery, the light flickered again, longer this time. Steady, like someone had finally found the switch. But who? One night, as thunder echoed above the city, she finally asked, What happened to you, Rohaan? He could have deflected. He could have left. But her voice didn't demand answers, it offered shelter. My sister died here, he said quietly. She was part of that last exhibit. She loved this place more than life itself. After the fire, I never picked up the camera for real again. The words lingered in the damp air. Miraal didn't speak. She just reached for a small candle she'd lit and slid it closer to his side. A gesture that meant you're not alone anymore. But in the shadows behind them, hidden in old cracks and broken scaffolding, a forgotten journal lay buried. And when Miraal's hand brushed against it days later, everything changed. The pages weren't hers. The sketches weren't hers. But the handwriting, it matched her father's. She didn't answer. Just smiled. Neither do you. Now, in a city that never stops moving, two fractured souls find themselves standing still, drawn to each other, and to a truth neither of them is ready to face. But something else is hidden beneath the city, a past that ties them closer than they realize. And tonight, the lights just flickered for the first time in years. To be continued.